What if I told you, the smarter you are, the easier it is to fool yourself? That intelligence, the very thing you're proud of, can also become the reason you make the worst mistakes of your life. It sounds strange, doesn't it? But think about it. The same mind that can solve problems can also create illusions. You can be logical, educated, successful, and still blind to your own arrogance. Because knowledge doesn't always bring wisdom. Sometimes it just builds a bigger ego. The smarter we become, the more we start trusting our thoughts as if they could never be wrong. We stop questioning, we stop doubting, we stop listening. And that's how intelligence quietly becomes a trap. We think intelligence protects us from failure, but in reality, it often just hides it. It covers our mistakes with clever excuses. It makes our pride sound like confidence and our stubbornness sound like strength. It tells us stories that make us feel safe. I know better. I've figured it out. I can't be fooled. But that's the illusion. Because the moment you believe you can't be fooled, you already have been. History is full of brilliant minds who lost everything. Not because they lacked knowledge, but because they refused to listen, refused to question, refused to admit they could be wrong. They were certain that they were right, certain that others were wrong, certain that their success proved their wisdom. But certainty can be dangerous. It blinds you to what's real. It replaces curiosity with pride. It turns open eyes into closed minds. The truth is, intelligence without self-awareness is like a sharp knife in the hands of a child. It cuts everything, including the one holding it. And arrogance? That's the fastest way for a brilliant mind to become blind. Because once you stop questioning yourself, you stop growing, you stop learning, you stop seeing what's in front of you. So, stay with me. Because by the end of this, you'll see how even the most intelligent minds turn stupid, not through ignorance, but through pride, and how Stoicism teaches us to stay humble, to stay calm, and to stay clear, even when our own mind tries to trick us. The certainty trap. Smart people crave certainty. They need to be right. It's what gives them control, what makes them feel safe. But here's the paradox. The more certain you are, the less you actually see, because certainty blinds you. It locks you inside your own opinions and turns your mind into a prison, a place where only your voice echoes back at you. You start defending your beliefs instead of questioning them. You start proving points instead of searching for truth. And slowly, you stop listening, you stop learning, you stop growing. Epictetus once said, "You cannot learn what you think you already know." That single line carries more power than most people realize. Because when you believe you already know everything, you stop paying attention to what life is trying to teach you. You stop noticing the small lessons hidden in failure. You ignore the wisdom that comes from people who think differently than you. You brush off advice. You interrupt others mid-sentence. You assume you already understand. And that's the curse of the clever. Their mind becomes a full cup, overflowing with confidence, but empty of humility. And when the cup is full, no new wisdom can enter. No matter how much life tries to pour in, it simply spills over and disappears. That's why so many intelligent people get stuck repeating the same mistakes. They confuse being informed with being wise. They mistake intelligence for insight, but those two are not the same. Intelligence is about collecting facts. Wisdom is about seeing the truth behind them. When you cling to certainty, you trade curiosity for comfort, and comfort kills growth. You stop exploring, you stop asking, you stop wondering, what if? True wisdom begins with a simple sentence. Maybe I'm wrong. Those 3 words open more doors than intelligence ever could. They soften the ego. They make space for understanding. They allow growth to return. Because the moment you stop clinging to certainty, you begin to see the world as it truly is, not as you want it to be. And that's when the mind becomes clear again. Not full, not perfect, but open, the ego mirror. Intelligence loves attention. It wants to be seen, to be praised, to be recognized as the sharpest mind in the room. It enjoys being the one with the answers, the one everyone turns to. And at first, that feels good. It feels like proof that all your hard work, your knowledge, your intelligence finally mean something. But when intelligence meets ego, something dangerous happens. It stops searching for truth and starts performing for applause. Ego doesn't care about understanding. It cares about winning. It cares about being right even when it's wrong. It turns the mind inward, not toward reflection, but toward self-worship. It whispers, "You already know enough. You're smarter than them. You don't need advice." And that's when mistakes multiply. Because ego is a mirror, but a distorted one. It doesn't show who you are. It only shows who you want to be. You start debating instead of listening. You start correcting others instead of trying to understand them. You start defending your pride instead of defending the truth. And, slowly, you stop growing. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every morning, don't be carried away by pride. Even as an emperor, the most powerful man in the world, he fought the same invisible battle we all do, the battle to stay humble when surrounded by praise, because he knew that the loudest danger isn't the noise outside us. It's the quiet voice inside saying, "I'm better, I'm right, I already know." That voice feels powerful. It feels safe. But it's poison disguised as confidence. Because when ego takes over, your vision narrows. You stop seeing clearly. You stop seeing truth. You begin to measure your worth by how much you know, not by how much you learn. And soon, you're not growing anymore. You're just defending your own reflection. You become trapped in the mirror, admiring your intelligence, your titles, your victories, while slowly losing your wisdom. And the worst part? You don't even notice it happening, because the mirror keeps smiling back. The overthinking loop. Smart people don't fail because they're stupid. They fail because they think too much. Their minds never rest. They replay conversations that already happened. They predict problems that don't exist yet. They analyze every detail, chase every possibility, and end up doing nothing. It's like standing in front of a door, debating the handle design, the color, the material. Instead of simply turning it and walking through, overthinking feels safe. It feels like preparation. It gives you the illusion of control, but it's not control, it's delay. It's the mind's clever way of hiding fear. Because deep down, overthinking is fear in disguise. Fear of being wrong, fear of failing, fear of being judged. You convince yourself that if you think long enough, you'll find the perfect choice. But perfection is just another form of paralysis. Every new thought becomes another what if, and every what if becomes another chain. Soon, your mind isn't solving problems, it's creating them. You start arguing with possibilities. You start living in future outcomes that never even happen. And by the time you're done imagining, life has already moved on without you. Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And that's the truth of overthinking. We live inside imagined disasters, fighting battles that don't exist. You lie awake at night, playing out 10 different endings to a story that hasn't even begun. You overthink a text, a choice, a risk. until the moment to act quietly disappears. Overthinking is mental noise, and noise kills wisdom, because wisdom lives in stillness. It lives in that quiet space between thought and action. When the noise fades, clarity enters, and in that clarity, you see the truth. You don't need a perfect plan, you just need a step. Sometimes the wisest move is not another thought, but a single action, small, uncertain, but real. So, if you ever feel stuck, remember this: clarity doesn't come from thinking more. It comes from moving once, because the door will never open until you stop thinking about it, and finally, turn the handle, the emotional blind spot. Logic without emotion is cold. Emotion without logic is chaos. But when the intelligent forget to feel, they disconnect from reality. You see, the mind loves control. It believes that emotions make us weak, that feelings are a distraction, that logic alone will keep us safe. But in truth, emotions aren't enemies. They're signals. They tell us where our values live, what we care about, what still hurts, and what truly matters. The problem isn't feeling too much. The problem is not understanding why we feel it. Most intelligent people make this mistake. They overvalue logic and undervalue awareness. They analyze feelings like data, trying to reason their way out of pain. But emotions aren't problems to be solved. They're messages to be understood. A calm mind isn't emotionless. It's aware. It doesn't run from emotion. It observes it. It lets the wave rise, but doesn't let it drown them. It watches without judgment, and then decides what to do next. Stoicism never taught us to be stone. It taught us to be steady, to master emotion, not murder it. When anger rises, the Stoic pauses. When fear appears, they breathe. When sadness comes, they sit with it, knowing that even pain has something to teach. And in that stillness, they ask the question that changes everything. Is this emotion guiding me or blinding me? Because when emotion drives without reason, judgment crashes. You say things you don't mean. You act before you think. You regret what you couldn't control. Even the smartest mind can become the most foolish. When emotion takes the wheel, the Stoics understood it's not about killing emotion, but about giving it direction. Emotion is fire. Too much burns, too little freezes. But when balanced, it becomes light. Light that warms, that guides, that reveals truth. And that light is what leads to wisdom, the success trap. The more success intelligence brings, the more dangerous it becomes, because success feeds the ego, and the ego loves to eat. Each victory whispers softly, "You're special. You've figured it out. You can't be wrong." And, without realizing it, you start to believe those whispers. You start walking taller, speaking louder, listening less. Past wins build pride, and pride builds walls. Invisible ones. Walls made of confidence, comfort, and the illusion of mastery. At first, those walls protect you. They make you feel safe, untouchable, invincible. But slowly, they start to trap you. You stop experimenting because failure feels beneath you. You stop questioning because doubt feels like weakness. And you stop growing because growth only happens when you admit you still have more to learn. Yesterday's wisdom can't solve tomorrow's problems. But the proud mind doesn't care. It says, "It worked before, it'll work again." It clings to old tools in a new world, recycling the same ideas, expecting new results. And that's how progress dies. Not in failure, but in comfort. Because comfort feels like peace, until you realize it's actually decay. The Stoics warned about this. They saw success as the greatest test of all. Because failure humbles you, but success flatters you. And flattery is far more dangerous than pain. Comfort doesn't challenge you. It doesn't push you to grow. It tells you you've already made it. It convinces you that effort is no longer necessary. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, and yet every night he reminded himself, "Remember, you are just a man, not a god." He knew that power without humility rots the soul from the inside. Even at the top, he practiced stillness, self-control, and reflection. Because he understood the truth most people forget. Success isn't a finish line. It's a mirror. And what you see in that mirror reveals whether your mind is still growing or quietly rotting in pride. So be careful. Every time you win, every time you achieve, pause and ask yourself, am I learning or just repeating? Because the moment you stop evolving, your intelligence stops serving you and starts owning you. The return to humility. So, how do you stop the spiral? How do you stop the mind from turning its own brilliance into blindness? The Stoics gave the answer long ago. Humility. Humility is not weakness. It's strength under control. It's the courage to admit, I don't know everything, and that's exactly why I keep learning. In a world obsessed with being right, humility feels almost invisible. People rush to speak, to prove, to win, but few pause long enough to listen. That's why humility is powerful. It allows your mind to stay open, to listen, to evolve, to absorb new truths without feeling threatened by them. Socrates built his entire life on this idea. He said, "The only true wisdom is knowing you know nothing." And that paradox, the strength in not knowing, is what keeps the mind clear, curious, and alive. Humility keeps you grounded. When success tries to lift you too high, it keeps you calm. When ego tries to shout, it keeps you learning. When certainty tries to close the door, because a humble mind never stops growing. It doesn't wear knowledge like a crown. It carries it like a tool, something to build with, not something to boast about. A truly wise person doesn't chase being the smartest. They aim to be wiser, quieter, steadier, because wisdom isn't loud. It doesn't need to announce itself. It reveals itself in calm actions, in patience, in understanding. Humility turns knowledge into wisdom, and wisdom into peace. It's the bridge between what we know and what we're still meant to learn. So when your mind begins to race, when your ego starts to rise, pause and remind yourself, I am a student of life, not its master. Because that's the mindset that never stops growing. That's the heart of Stoicism. That's where intelligence ends and wisdom begins. So, how do intelligent minds become stupid? Not through ignorance, but through arrogance. By forgetting that intelligence isn't wisdom. By letting ego, certainty, and emotion drown out awareness. They stop questioning. They stop listening. They stop seeing. And that's how brilliance slowly turns into blindness. But how do you stop it? How do you protect the mind from itself? By practicing the oldest Stoic truth of all. Stay curious, stay humble, stay calm. Because curiosity keeps you learning. Humility keeps you grounded. And calmness keeps you clear when everything around you is chaos. Remember, the mind that says, I don't know, isn't weak. It's wise. It's the only kind of mind, brave enough to keep discovering, to keep growing, to keep evolving. The Stoics knew that wisdom isn't about conquering the world. It's about conquering yourself. It's about mastering your thoughts before they master you. So take a breath. Let the noise fall silent. Let the tension melt from your shoulders. And remind yourself You don't have to have all the answers. You just need the courage to keep learning, because learning is endless. Growth is endless. And that's what makes life beautiful. Drop this in the comments. I choose wisdom over pride, because even the brightest mind is nothing without clarity, and true clarity comes from humility. Be calm, be clear, be wise.